So, this is a smart speaker project that I've mentioned in a few of my videos that probably no one's watched, because no one watches my videos because they're really bad, which is fine. So these are salvaged speaker cones from some either Harman Kardon or Bang & Olufsen computer speakers from like the 80s or whatever. They're like really old beige computer speakers. Not from the 80s, probably 90s, but they're really old beige computer speakers. I have them mounted in this shell, and that's actually PLA there to bond some PLA, except it's white because I didn't have any black for my 3-doodler. And I wanted to figure out the best way to bond some PLA, so I decided to use the 3-doodler, though melting it together with a soldering iron might have been better. I wouldn't have gotten that ugly white seam, but this has actually bonded pretty well. This was printed in one part, that's the I.O. for the chip, which is going to be powering the smart speaker, and that's what makes it smart. So I followed an instructable guide on how to get Bluetooth audio receiver working for the Pi, which worked on the chip, and then I just installed share port. And I may install G Streamer for UPnP, but SSH is enabled on that, so I can just install those things anytime I want. This is the battery I'm going to be using. It claims to be 2,000 milliamps. I highly doubt that, but it should be enough. And I'm probably just going to shove that down here. And this connector's too big, so I'm going to splice it off and put on a nice smaller connector and just use the chip's built-in battery circuitry. This is a 3.7 volt LiPo. This is the amp board I'm using. I got the power going to the chip, and I know that says speaker. I guess you can think of it as speaker power. This was salvaged from something else, and I just felt like reusing it because I had it. Then these are going to be soldered onto these wires, and I know I could have just soldered these directly onto there. I didn't have these when I soldered these wires on, and I wasn't even planning on using connectors. I was just going to solder everything, and then I was like, you know, I should probably just use connectors. Because it's much better if you ever want to service this in the future, and I should really 3D print some sort of phone camera holder. I'm 3D printing some organizational things right there for my drawer system. And this is my workbench. This is why I've never showed it before. It's a giant mess. Yeah, this is what happens when you're working on a project, at least for me. And then it gets mostly cleaned up, but it's never actually all that clean, because there's always something going on. With me just working with random stuff on it. So I guess I'm gonna call it. Okay, so first off, I just want to mention again why anyone watches these videos is beyond me. Which is probably why pretty much no one does. But I think my most viewed video is at like 50 views now, which means 50 people wasted their time watching me ramble on about random electronics. Which is fine. I mean, hey, maybe I taught people some things. I've learned most of my electronic knowledge from YouTube, so that's fine. But also I realized I got a blue instead of a black for some reason, and I've already stripped and cut it. And I realized after I cut it, but before I stripped it, so I just decided to go with it, and I'm going to grab a Sharpie and probably paint it black. Well, color it black. So I'm going to do that, and then while the soldering iron's heating, and then I'll come back after this is soldered, because I can't really solder with one hand. It sure ain't perfect, but at least it's clearly not blue. So, I mean, I'm probably not going to get it mixed up. I mean, this one I painted black as well, because the polarity on this speaker's reversed, but the polarity... Or maybe the polarity's on this way. I don't really know. Yeah, I think the polarity on this was reversed. I'm sorry, I reversed the polarity on the speaker to make I did this for a reason, and it has worked. I tested it earlier just with the aux input on here. But I don't want to use the aux input on here. I want to use this. And this is going to be an aux input, except I don't feel like soldering the wires at this point in time. And hopefully this doesn't short out on anything. I should probably just put a little bit of electrical tape on that. The soldering iron's heating right now. That's a really, 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 really junky soldering iron. Because my half-decent one broke. I think the MOSFET failed open circuit in that. And I'm waiting on a TS100, which is actually a pretty nice soldering iron to come in, but that hasn't come in yet, and I wanted to work on this project, so I'm just using that really, really junky soldering iron I had lying around. I mean, it gets the job done, but it's just very basic, and it's only 30 watts. Okay, so my camera doesn't want to focus right now. But I've made decent progress while I was not filming. So the amp is all in. And I'm just gonna have to manage to shove that bundle of wires somewhere down there, but there's a decent amount of free space. The battery's ready to be soldered. I put some electrical tape over the negative lead to stop a lithium fire, because I don't want one of those in my basement. And once the soldering iron heats up, we'll just solder on the battery to the smaller connector for the chip, plug it in, and the speaker should be ready to go. As for mounting this back plate, it's gonna, of course, mount on the back. I put some carbon fiber wrap on it because it's just cheap plywood, and it's not in great condition. But the carbon fiber wrap looks nice, and it goes with the black 3D printed parts. I might carbon fiber wrap this, especially to hide my crude joining job that I probably should have just done with like a soldering iron or whatever. But as for mounting this on, of course the front is full of holes, and I have these like screws here and whatever, so I think I'm just going to 3D print some plastic spacers that go onto these screws, and then put some screws in the back that join up onto those plastic spacers, and just hold it on with some screws. That, of course, the screw doesn't go all the way through, but there's plastic spacers going all the way through, so it's screws in the front, screws in the back, hold that on. And, of course, I didn't cut it perfectly at all, because I'm not great at woodworking, and I didn't really do a very good job. I could have done a better job, probably, even though I'm not great at woodworking, but whatever. It looks decent once it's on. You do kind of notice it, but whatever. I might redo it at some point, but whatever. The iron's probably hot now, so I'm gonna go and solder, and then I'll be back. So that's soldered into place, and I should mention I'm using lead-free solder because I have a lot of it. And I know it's not as good as lead solder, but I like how this one's nice and thin. It's easier to work with in that way. You can't see it at all, but it's nice and thin and easy to work with, and, well, kind of easy to work with. It's easy to work with as lead-free solder can be, and I don't know, I just have a lot of it, because I bought it before I realized lead-free solder isn't very good. Because, yeah, I was very into lead-free solder for a very short amount of time before I tried lead solder, and was like, oh my gosh, why would anyone torture themselves with lead-free solder, except now I spent, like, I don't know, I probably have like 3 rolls of lead-free solder, so I might as well use it at some point. I don't know. And I don't know why I'm still filming, even though you can't see anything. I should probably stop. Come back after I finish soldering the negative lead. So the battery lead is made up. You can't see it. There it is. Yeah, this is interesting. So the lighting's not very... I'm filming with a G5, and the low light down here, it doesn't take it as well as my Moto. My Moto cracked, so I bought a G5 and sold my Moto as a cracked phone. And because Motorola wanted $175 to fix my Moto, Moto Z Play, and I could get a G5, which is, in my opinion, a better phone in almost every way, despite being hideously ugly, and it's modular. It's not really modular, is what I'm trying to say. So I just plugged in the battery. So now all I have to do is shove all these wires into place, and it should be good to go. At least without the front panel aux jack working. But again, I think I might just go with the rear panel one on this point and just leave a non-functional front panel one to be like, I don't really feel like fixing that, because I just got tired of soldering, frankly. And it was more work to solder on the front panel one that I didn't feel like doing, and I'm trying to shove all the wires into place and they keep springing out, which is annoying. It's definitely not ideal. But the battery's discharged, which makes sense. I guess for shipping you want to discharge the battery. It shipped from China, as you would expect from things of its nature. Most electronic things and just things in general, or China. That's what I'm trying to say. Just, trust China. They'll build you all the useless gadgets you'll ever need. This is really legitimately quite difficult. But I'm almost there. And I'm just going to unplug this one again. I'm unplugging a few of them so I can shove the other ones in. There we go. So there's all the wires mostly shoved into place. It's not 100% perfect, but it'll compress when I put the back panel on. And I'm not going to put the back panel on yet because I haven't 3D printed the parts. And I haven't tested it. So you're going to see me test this for the first time. Which I'm hoping it'll work because it should. So I'm going to pause the camera and grab a cable and I'll be back in a moment. And a battery bank. Because I actually don't have... I have my power supply, but I don't have a USB socket. So I have a couple female USB ends and I'll eventually add a USB socket to it. But for now I'm just going to grab a battery bank. Okay, so I've got the battery bank. This is just, I paid about $4 for this, and I populated it with my own 18650s I salvaged from a couple of laptop batteries. So, I can't really hold the camera and plug this in, so I'm going to bounce it here, I think, so you can at least maybe see the power light on the chip and whatever, assuming it powers on. And the amp has a power light on it somewhere as well. Okay, so my blue power LED lit up, the chip's power LED lit up, nothing on the amp, but then the amp is actually technically off right now, which I didn't realize, so, because the volume knob acts as its on switch. Still nothing on the amp. So, what's up there? I don't know. I'm assuming it's just something's not making good connection. But you see my amp? The amp runs off 5 volts, so I'm just powering it off the 5 volts from the chip GPIO. But my power supply is a really short cable. But if I turn my power supply on to, right now it's at 4.9, and I moved this whole thing over there and plugged the amp in, it would start working. So I don't know why the amp's not working. I mean, the amp has the most points of failure, but, let's at least see if my audio is working, if I plug the amp into separate power. So I'm going to pause the camera so I can, move it over. Okay, I plugged the amp in and it's on. So the chip is presumably booted by now, so I want to see if the audio works. So I'm going to pair my phone with it over Bluetooth. Presuming it's booted by now. I'm gonna, of course, have to pause the video for that. Can I open camera and multi-window? I can open camera and multi-window. I don't need to pause the camera. Okay, so hopefully I don't get copyright striked. That's the song by Josh Ritter. Check him out if you want to. Hopefully that stopped me from getting copyright striked. Yeah, whatever. It's probably fine. But it's still playing, so it's playing well. And now it's buffering, but... So it is working, except for power. And I don't know how the battery is doing. I don't know if it's charging up. I almost want to pull the battery bank and see if it can run at least for a couple seconds on the external battery. I mean, not the internal battery, instead of the external one. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. It is running on the internal battery now, you can see. And it's still running. You probably can't hear anything because I have this OtterBox case on and the microphone hole isn't cut out. So I'm probably just rambling for nothing. That just occurred to me. Or if you can hear anything, it'll probably sound awful. But the speaker is working, with the exception of amp power. Pretty good for first try. So I'll just continue to troubleshoot that. Probably not today, but also that LED's kind of bright, but whatever. Yeah. Okay, so now it's buffering again, but it wasn't doing that before I started the video. So I'm gonna blame the video on it, and I'm gonna blame my phone. Because it was working quite well. This is actually AirPlay, which wasn't working well with my old Moto. And of course now it's not working well that I'm filming, but it actually was working quite well before. Yeah, this is what it was doing on my old Moto, but, it was... Yeah. I just should mention I was listening to it for, 45 seconds without any issues, which is much better than I was getting on my Moto. And filament almost fell on top of my head. There it is. My stand slid a little bit. I should probably put some like non-skid pads on the bottom of it. And this is boat-in tubing to I added the boat-in tubing after I already spooled this roll, and I didn't feel like re-spooling it to allow for the boat-in tubing. But it's just a neater way to spool the roll to the printer down there. You see, now it's working decently again now that my phone's got over the shock of me starting the camera. And I feel compelled to ramble over the song again so I don't get a copyright strike. So I feel like Josh Ritter's pretty good about that kind of thing. I don't know how his record house is. Oh dear. So I've been troubleshooting this with the issues I found prior. In the prior segment, and I got the amp powered. That part was pretty easy. I just checked continuity all the way through, but pretty easy. And then I did the same thing for the right audio channel, and the continuity went all the way through, no problem. And basically, there's no problem with the problem's not on the chip's end. The problem is with the because when I put it in dual mono, this speaker still doesn't work, which means the problem's on the amp's end. So that could mean that one of these wires is not actually really making contact on the speaker, though they visually seem to. You can't really see that. These wires, it's possible they're not making contact. So I'm gonna have to test for continuity there. But I'm pretty sure the right channel on the amplifier is fried. Which means I'm gonna need to get a new amp and solder new wires onto it, and it's gonna be a giant pain. So I don't really know what to do about that. I don't know if it works this way. Probably doesn't work this way. But, would it work if I took the, left speaker negative and connected it here and there, and then would I get dual mono? Because I would be happy with dual mono, frankly. The stereo separation in this isn't going to be great. The speakers aren't that far away. Dual mono's fine. I just want both speakers to work. I mean, yeah. I don't know. I'm going to keep troubleshooting, I guess. It's just very annoying. So, 6 days out of the return policy for my amp. I mean, it's not that expensive. It's $3. Still. Very, very annoying. That I'm only a couple days out as of filming. Yeah. And I didn't mention it, but continuity between, the appropriate places, these two little, you can't see them because the camera's out of focus. Yeah. There we go. It's kind of focused. Do you see these two little metal points down here? Continuity between these and the tabs on the speakers, is good. So, the right channel on my amp's dead. Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.